What I'm going to tell you in the next few minutes, you're going to sit there and say to yourself, wow, this is insane. Like the fact that when you walk into a hospital, you have a 1 in 7 chance of being injured or killed due to medical negligence in the hospital. It kills between 250 and 450,000 people a year in this country. That's not my word. That's from medical establishments like Johns Hopkins. It causes untold suffering, paralysis, brain damage, birth defects. Medical malpractice is far more common and frequent than you may think. I'm Chip Wagar. I'm a medical malpractice lawyer. I've been doing this for over 2 decades, and I've seen a lot. Some of the things that I've seen, you won't believe. I want you to stick around with me for the next few minutes. I'm going to tell you some stories, some heart-wrenching stories of medical malpractice, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about Louisiana's unbelievably harsh and cruel medical malpractice law, the harshest in this country. Medical malpractice is defined by law in a technical way that I'm not going to go into here. What it really is a violation of patient safety by a doctor who does something unreasonable that another doctor under the same or similar circumstances would never do. Our clients have been affected by medical malpractice and are subject to Louisiana's harsh medical malpractice laws, and there's nothing they can do about it. You're going to hear some stories who are members of our board or who are officers of the Patient Rights Advocacy Forum who've already been through all this. It's too late for them. The reason you should be aware of Louisiana's laws and their impact is because someday it can happen to you. But before I do, you got to understand something. It's very important for you to understand that in Louisiana, any damage award that a jury makes is subject to a limitation that was imposed by the Louisiana legislature in 1975. In Louisiana, the wrongdoer, the surgeon, the nursing home, the hospital, whoever it may be, is subject to a $100,000 limit on the damages that can be awarded against him or the institution. That's a hard cap that includes everything: emotional pain and suffering, loss of income, medical expenses, you name it. That's what Louisiana has in store for you or a loved one should you fall victim to medical malpractice. There's another cap on top of that. Additional damages can be paid by a state institution known as the Patient Compensation Fund. Another $400,000 plus medical expenses can be added to that. But that's it. That's all you can get. And what that is a decision that was made when Gerald Ford was President of the United States in 1975, without listening to the evidence in your case, and no matter how severe the injury might be, that it was for your own good that you be limited, that your rights be stripped away, and that a jury 50 years later could have their verdict thrown aside by something they decided way back then. One more thing about caps that you need to know. When the legislature imposed those caps way back in 1975, they didn't put any consumer price index inflation adjustment into the act. So, $100,000 in 1975 dollars would be worth over $450,000 today, but it's never been changed. And lobbyists for the healthcare industry beat back any attempt to change that or put in an inflation adjustment for those damages. They want it to stay the same. They want to protect billion-dollar hospital chains at your expense. Before it happens to you, you need to help us help you change the laws in this state so that if you or someone you love has become a victim of medical malpractice, you can get full and fair compensation for that injury or death. Virtually all of our clients' lives have been irreversibly changed by medical malpractice. I'll just pick one that particularly grieves me even to this day. We had a case, a woman had a benign brain tumor, a brain tumor that normally is cut out of the brain with little or no after effects, in which people live a normal life after it occurs, a benign brain tumor. Unfortunately for this woman, when the brain tumor was removed, the surgeon left a hole between her brain and the ethmoid sinuses that are located right beneath the skull. The brain is sterile and has to remain sterile. Your sinuses are full of germs, fungus, bacteria, and stuff that we breathe in the air every day. So when these tumors are removed and leave a hole, which happens, that hole has to be covered. It wasn't covered in this case. It was covered actually by a flimsy piece of cloth. And over 5 long months, her husband and her daughter watched her decline and suffer and die. That case went to trial. That case, the doctor refused to admit he ever did anything wrong. He was backed up by a huge medical institution with plenty of money and one of the best law firms money can buy. The family was never offered a single penny in settlement. I'm happy to tell you we got them a rather large verdict. But this is not about me or my law firm. This is about the kind of terrible injuries that one can suffer in this case. In that case, the damage award was cut down to less than half of what the jury awarded because of the caps on medical malpractice that Louisiana law imposes on victims. And that's what we need to change. A victim of medical malpractice, or his or her family, might be the only ones affected by the medical malpractice. But you'd be wrong. It affects everyone in 2 major ways. One is because medical malpractice should have consequences that curb more medical malpractice. When you take away a check, it takes away balance. If you want less medical malpractice lawsuits and less medical malpractice awards, we need less malpractice. The other way that it affects everybody in the community is because you're helping to pay for it. Really? You might ask yourself, how is that? Well, since damages are capped and don't cover the immense medical bills that may be involved, the future medical care of a paralyzed, brain damaged baby who's going to need medical care 24/7, 365 for the rest of its life, who do you think pays for it? I'll tell you who pays for it. You do, the taxpayer. You're going to pay for it through Medicaid, Medicare, Social Security disability benefits, veterans benefits. Who should pay? You or the wrongdoer? It's not just the victim that suffers. We all do. There is a case that is particularly tragic that probably haunts me and Sarah Hickman to this day. And for sake of privacy, I won't mention any names for the moment, but you may hear their story if you follow us on this channel. In this case, there was a little girl, a baby. I think she was maybe 4 months old. maybe younger than that, 2 months old, very, very newborn baby. And she had breathing difficulties. I'll just leave it at that. And these breathing difficulties were potentially life-threatening, particularly if she got a cold or, an infection of any kind. She went through a couple of near misses and eventually was transferred to a New Orleans hospital for further care. She got to further care at the hospital, but she was still suffering from an infection and was in the Pediatric Intensive Care Unit, or PICU as they call it, when someone, and it was never very clear who it was until the very end of the case, someone decided to discharge her to her parents' home, this delicate child in delicate health who just had surgery and was still suffering from respiratory illness, to discharge her straight from intensive care to her parents. The parents were so mortified and so concerned that they actually stayed. They weren't from New Orleans. They actually stayed in New Orleans at a hotel for another night, just in case they needed to bring her back to the hospital. They took her home. During the night, she died. I want to point out also that if the parents had succeeded, the damages would have been limited to $500,000. There was no future medical for this little baby. That recovery would have been split between the mother and the father, which is another aspect of our law that is so unfair. In many other states, Texas, for example, the cap that they too have is imposed per claimant. In other words, the full cap can be recovered by each person who has a lawful right to sue for damages for medical malpractice. Not here, not in Louisiana. The Supreme Court of Louisiana has interpreted Louisiana's Medical Malpractice Act to mean per patient. So, for example, if a family of a husband and 3 children lost their mother and wife due to medical malpractice, and they received the maximum award of $500,000. And remember, only 100 of that thousand of that does the wrongdoer, the hospital or the doctor, have to pay. But if they got the full $500,000, that would have to be split 4 ways. Yeah, after attorney's fees and after costs are removed. You see why this 1975 law needs to be changed. Many of us think about medical malpractice. Many of us have a natural fear of undergoing surgery, being admitted to a hospital for a disease or an injury, and that it might turn out badly. Maybe we think about that. Maybe we go on the internet and look up the doctor, the hospital, on the internet. What's the one thing you might want to know about that doctor? Has he been involved in any malpractice cases? Try it yourself. Don't take my word for it. Look it up on any one of these WebMDs, Health Grades, and so forth. Scroll down to the medical malpractice section and see what you find in Louisiana. Spoiler alert, you won't find anything. The only people who can look at it are hospitals. As a matter of fact, if you were to get a doctor or a hospital administrator to get that statistical information for you about a particular doctor, it's a crime under federal law, and the person who does it can be punished. That's how secret it is. There is a board, a board of directors. There is not one patient advocate on there. As a matter of fact, the statute that sets it up mandates that the members of the board be from the insurance industry, the hospital industry, the medical society, and, well, you get the idea. Not one patient advocate is on that board. I don't think I have to spell it out for you as to what that means when the Patient Compensation Board is in charge of compensating victims of medical malpractice. One last thing about the patient compensation. Right now, as of the last time I looked, a month or so ago, they have $1.3 billion in investments to pay medical malpractice claims in this state. They've been building up this surplus for years and years and years. At the rate that medical malpractice payments are made in this state, and you can look this up yourself on the internet, they could fund patient compensation for the next 10 years without ever collecting another dime. Our medical malpractice law here in Louisiana, the caps do not punish or restrict people with small injuries. The caps punish and cruelly restrict damage awards on the worst injured victims in Louisiana. The ones who are dead, the ones who are brain damaged, the ones who have amputations, the ones who have life-altering injuries. They're the ones that get affected by the caps, not people with smaller injuries. Not that anyone would want to be injured by medical malpractice, no matter how small, but they can usually recover damages within the caps. But the really injured people are the ones that take it on the chin. What can you do? I'll answer that question, and that's what this organization is for. If you were to go to the website of the Secretary of State of Louisiana, you can find all the registered lobbyists who prowl the halls of the legislature in Baton Rouge every day when they're in session. I've done that. You know how many lobbyists are working for the healthcare industry? And by that I mean doctors, hospitals, nursing homes, the whole gamut. 82. See how many you can find that are working for victims and patients. I couldn't find any. And that's what the Patient Rights Advocacy Forum is going to try to do. We're going to go up to Baton Rouge and we're going to advocate on behalf of victims and patients. We have truth on our side. I won't say that there's any single case that made me want to do this. Rather, it's sort of a feeling of sadness that drove me to want to do something. I've helped a lot of people get compensation for the injuries or the loss of a loved one in medical malpractice. And I always tell them the same thing when I'm handing them the check. It should be more. It should be much more. It's not enough. It's not enough. And it's not enough because Louisiana's Medical Malpractice Act makes it that way. I decided I wanted to do something, but I need your help. I can't do this alone. Our board members, our officers, we can't do this alone. We need your help. Please help us. Donate your time, write letters, write emails. We can help. Thanks for watching this video. Keep watching this channel. We have more videos I think you'll find very interesting. Remember to follow us on social media. We'll post as often as we can. We're getting ready for the next legislative session in 2025. It may not happen the first time, but we're not going to stop.